When you look at the markets today, it can feel, well, pretty chaotic. But what if I told you that the playbook for a lot of what we see, the wild ups, the terrifying downs, was actually written almost a century ago? Today, we're diving into the story of the Great Depression, and not just as a history lesson, but as a really important guide to the economic forces that are still shaping our world right now.
And that idea is really at the heart of this whole thing. It's so easy to look at our modern economy and think, oh, we're way too smart for those old mistakes. But the Great Depression is this huge, flashing reminder that the things that drive markets, that intoxicating rush of greed when things are good, and that ice-cold fear when they're not, that stuff is absolutely timeless.
So where does a story about a total financial collapse even begin? Well, funny enough, it doesn't start with a crash. It starts with a party. We're heading back to the Roaring '20s, a decade of incredible prosperity, jazz, and this feeling that the good times were never, ever going to end.
Okay, so let's set the scene. The year is 1918. The Great War is finally over, and for America, which came out on the winning side, it feels like a brand new dawn. There's this massive wave of optimism sweeping the country, and it's about to light the fuse on an economic explosion.
And what fueled that explosion? Well, it was people. You had soldiers coming home ready to build and work. More women were entering the workforce than ever before, which meant second incomes for families. Suddenly, people had cash, and they were spending it on amazing new technologies like radios and washing machines. But the real game changer? Easy credit. For the first time, regular folks could buy now and pay later, and that created this powerful engine of spending that defined the whole decade.
So with all this new money floating around, people started asking themselves, where can we put this to make more money? And for millions, the answer was Wall Street. This rush of cash kicked off a massive bull market, a period where stock prices just kept climbing and climbing, pulling in investors from every walk of life.
I mean, think about it. The stock market used to be this exclusive playground for Wall Street tycoons. Suddenly, it felt like a golden ticket for everyone. We're talking cooks, factory workers, even shoeshine boys hearing stock tips on the street and pouring their entire life savings into companies they'd never even heard of.
And the growth was, well, it was absolutely staggering. From 1922 to 1929, the market surged an incredible 218%. Just wrap your head around that. It's like the entire nation's wealth more than doubled in less than a decade. It felt less like investing and more like a sure thing.
This created this powerful illusion. Everyone thought they were an investing genius. It felt impossible to lose. This crazy overconfidence led people to start borrowing money to buy even more stock, a practice we call buying on margin. This basically poured gasoline on the fire, creating this massive, precarious bubble built entirely on borrowed money.
But here's a critical lesson in finance, and it's just as true today. The stock market is not the economy. So while Wall Street was celebrating record highs, the real economy, the world of factories and farms and actual wages, was quietly sending out some serious distress signals. The warning signs were all there for anyone who was willing to look. Factory output was slowing down, workers' wages were stagnating, that easy credit that got the whole party started was beginning to dry up as interest rates rose. Basically, the real economic engine was sputtering, even as the stock market rocketed upward on pure optimism. But hey, in the middle of a frenzy, nobody wants to hear the bad news.
Eventually, though, reality has to set in. And when it did, it was sudden and it was catastrophic. This brings us to the climax of our story, the Great Crash of 1929.
The whole thing unraveled with brutal speed, and it all centered around 2 days that would become infamous. It began on Black Thursday, October 24th, with a tremor of panic that shook the market. But the real earthquake hit 5 days later, on Black Tuesday, when the floor completely gave out.
The panic was immediate. On Black Thursday, a record 12.9 million shares were sold off. The selling was so fast and furious that the tickers couldn't even keep up, which meant investors had no idea what prices they were even getting. The moment the opening bell rang that day, the market plummeted 11%. Instantly. Imagine an entire decade of confidence and optimism just vanishing in the time it takes to drink your morning coffee.
By Black Tuesday, it was an outright panic. The market lost an estimated $40 billion in a single day. People's entire life savings were just wiped out. And anyone who had borrowed to invest, they were completely crushed. The dream was over.
The crash wasn't just a one-day event. No,
It was the trigger for a decade of economic hardship that would become known as the Great Depression.
The fall was long and it was painful. The market didn't just crash, it kept crashing. By 1932, the Dow Jones had lost nearly 90% of its peak value. A decade of wealth, built on hope and credit, was completely erased. And the pain spread far beyond Wall Street. The banks, which had also been speculating in the market, began to collapse. This meant that even people who had never bought a single stock lost everything. They went to withdraw their life savings, only to find the bank stores locked for good. On average, they recovered just 10 cents for every dollar they thought was safe.
This created a devastating chain reaction. As businesses went bankrupt, jobs just vanished. At the Depression's worst point, the unemployment rate reached an almost unimaginable 24.9%. That's 1 in every 4 workers with no job and no income, forcing millions into breadlines just to feed their families. But out of this immense hardship came valuable lessons and some crucial reforms designed to prevent a catastrophe like this from ever happening again.
In response, President Franklin D. Roosevelt's administration built a new financial safety net. The FDIC was created to insure your bank deposits, which means that even if a bank fails, your savings are protected. And at the same time, the SEC was established to act as a referee for the stock market, enforcing rules against the kind of reckless speculation that caused the crash.
So these reforms created some crucial guardrails for our financial system. But they can't regulate human nature. The Great Depression was ultimately a story of greed and fear, 2 emotions that are just as powerful today as they were in 1929. Which leaves us with a pretty vital question. With all our modern tools and knowledge, have we truly moved past the boom and bust psychology that caused it all?